Sorry. All right. Good morning, everyone. So I see that we have people joining in. So just wait for a few more minutes. Make sure everyone has come online. So let's get started. So maybe you would like to tell us which city you are from. So which city are you joining? It's a nice holy morning. So I assume not many people from north, but I could be wrong. Hey, we got someone from Vadodara. Interesting, I'm from Vadodara. Bangalore, Kolkata, Chennai, Delhi, Mumbai, Kota, Barakpur, Vadodara again. Interesting, Hyderabad, Chandigarh. We have someone joining from East Coast. Utkarsh from Bangalore, Gurgaon, St. Louis, another one from US, Coimbatore, Kolkata, Bangalore, Bhubaneswar, Bangalore again. I can imagine more people from Bangalore, right? So Delhi, correct? Sharon from Bangalore, Pooja from Boston. I see quite a few people from the US as well, but I would imagine that the maximum participants are from Bangalore. Excellent. So let's get started with what we have in store. We have a few more people from the US. Great. So I'll just tell you what we have in store. So as you probably know, we're going to have, I like this nice French word, tete-a-tete, or however else it's pronounced, with Rahul. So Rahul will be, this is already on the call, and he would be, introducing himself, and he would be taking us through what he has in store. As you know, Rahul is from Kellogg. I will let him introduce himself. So let's get some basics out of the way. So the agenda for today's session is we will have Rahul share his experience about his whole admission process, his joining a B school, life in a B school, post B school, how life has been, what would it, mean for a Kellogg grad, how does the job market look today? Just his thoughts on that. And then he would also be answering questions that you may have for him, right? So I will be moderating this session, which means I will curate the questions and I'll be letting Rahul know what they are, right? So that's the agenda, and we hope to go till about 12 p.m. local time or before that. So we have scheduled for about an hour, but we could go a little bit more than that, so that in case you want to manage your time today, you know how long we need to be here, right? Couple of ground rules just to make sure that we are on the same page, right? The first rule is if even one of you is able to hear us, we would imagine that everyone can hear us, right? So the problem is not at our end, the problem is at your end, okay? But Rahul is connecting from the US, I'm connecting from India. You know how it is in India. So in the event that power goes off or my internet connection goes down, wait for about 20 seconds. You will see a lot of other people saying, can't hear, can't hear. So just hold on. I'll probably join soon enough, right? A couple of features that I just wanted to show you. The first feature is we have the chat window. So all of you were able to look at the chat window. So I'm going to just type a hello. So that's the chat window. So you can just use the chat window to just, chat or say or comment something, okay, while the webinar is going on. But for you to ask a question that I would be answering at the end of the webinar, you see the Q&A box. Okay, so you should be able to see a Q&A box, and in that Q&A box, please type in your questions. I'm going to kind of restrict, I'm sorry I'm playing this role, but I'm going to restrict the questions. So make sure that you ask a question that is slightly generic, not specific to your profile. because that may not be within the scope of today's webinar. So I have something for you at the end of the webinar, but you could just post in your questions over here. And when the Q&A session starts, we will make sure we will go through it and answer all of them. All right. There is a third thing, which is the poll, which I'll be asking you, once in a while. So here is the first poll. How many of you are Crackverbal students? Just wanted to understand a little bit more about the audience who's participating. So it also tells me whether you are listening. Okay, because the other thing that I would request all of you is just for the next 1 hour, close all the other windows and just focus. I can guarantee that the value that we will be adding in the next 1 hour will save you tons of time, tons of effort when you go about seeking those answers online, right? Typically, such consultation sessions with Rahul and me would come at a price point, but we are doing this webinar for free. We want to make sure that we deliver as much value as possible. All right, cool. So I got some answers. So we got a mix of people, some of them from classroom, some of them online students, and many of them who are not yet Crackverbal students. Great. So with the rules out of the way, let's just kind of give a background about Crackverbal to those who don't know. So we started in 2006. So a little bit of background is Crackverbal. When we started our journey, we essentially, I had one single intent. That intent is back then, okay, I'm talking about 12 years ago. There weren't many coaching classes which catered to people who are looking at a top 10, top 20 kind of B school, both in terms of GMAT as well as in terms of admissions. So what we had put together was, a bunch of people who had been there and done that, and they actually were the Crackverbal faculty when we started off. And even today, the legacy continues. We have a lot of our mentors who have been people who have, gone to top schools. And what we at Crackverbal tend to believe is we are a bridge which connects such achievers with the rest, so that others sitting in Bangalore, sitting in India, or even in the US for that matter, can have access to people who know what it takes to get there. Correct. So many a times I've heard students saying, "Oh, I don't know what it means to get into an Ivy League." But when you actually talk to people, the idea is to inspire them and to help them push their potential as much as possible. Right. So a brief background about me, then I'm going to give it to Rahul. So I'm the founder of Crackverbal, and I would like to think of myself as the Harsha Bogle of admission consulting, which is, if you look at it, Harsha Bogle did not, in the commentator panel, he's the only guy who doesn't have test experience, right? He probably played just about first-class cricket. But what he brings to the table is an insight from a common perspective, from a common man's perspective, right? So he doesn't look at cricket from a technicality perspective, but he looks at it from a perspective of, okay, why did he do that, or why did the captain decide to, bat after winning the toss? So similarly, for the admission consulting bit, I think, I kind of like to keep it very simple. I like to focus on the big picture. What do you bring to the table? How does the B school help you? What do you plan to do post your MBA, right? I usually talk about larger things, and then obviously we get into the execution when we start writing the essays. But that's my take. I'm going to give it to Rahul. So Rahul, you're able to hear us?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Good morning, everyone. It's actually for people from the US, similar to me. It's a pretty late evening out here. But thank you, everyone, for joining in. My name is Rahul. I'm a 2013 Kellogg graduate. I'm a passionate marketer, have been in marketing for some plus years. And I currently work with a company called RB. You probably know them well for their brands, such as Lysol, Airwick, Finish, Durex, Mucinex, and a ton of other brands. So yeah, I am privileged, and I would love to share my journey with you. Currently, I'm still associated with Kellogg. I'm an active member of the New York chapter. I also am involved in their admission team in some context here and there, and I'll talk about that later on a little bit more. So that's me in a nutshell, and let's get going from there into the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to start my my talk a little bit by saying thank you. Thank you, first of all, to Crackverbal for giving me this opportunity to come and speak with you guys, and thank you all for joining in. I think that's a great first step, which can change your life. And I don't say it just for the sake of saying it. You'll see, I took one such small step, and it did change my life in a big way. But yeah, I mean, it's coming the next day after Holi on a pretty much Saturday morning itself is a big step forward. So in today's session, or in today's chat, I'll probably try to share a bit more about what you should expect in a B school, or probably when you go to an Ivy League. How can you achieve it? My thoughts of what worked for me, what did not work for me, what are the learnings which, if I would think about it, what would I do differently? And then there are a lot of questions which I keep getting whenever I speak to someone who's applying, or in fact who has got into like a business school in the US. There are a lot of these questions with today's political environment about what's happening, what should I do. I completely hear your apprehensions, and I'll probably share a bit about my thoughts on it. And then Arun wanted me to say a bit more about life in a corporate life. I'll probably again touch upon that a little bit in going. So one central point which I'll say is that I'll try to keep it informal. That's the kind of person I am. And I think don't hesitate to raise your questions. Don't hesitate to leave any comments behind, because finally all of those things would help you make the right decision, the right choice for your own life. It's very important. It's a very important and very critical moment in your life, and a very critical decision that you would be making soon. So I would like to facilitate it by keeping it as informal as possible. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Okay, so this is what I wanted to lay down as what to expect when you go to a top business school. The first thing which comes to my mind, which I felt when I stepped into Kellogg, is pride, satisfaction, and humbleness. It's not the normal way anybody would probably talk about it, but for me, after you have worked so hard to get in, it's that feeling of dream come true. It's that feeling of satisfaction. It's that feeling that yes, now you are going to truly change your life. That's the first thing which came to my mind when I walked into Kellogg. It's a feeling of now you are amongst people, and you are in an institute that have given the world great leaders that have changed the way the world is today. So for me, that itself shaped my life in a different way. That feeling shaped my life, because I still carry that on into every different assignment that I'm doing. That feeling of, yes, I am an achiever. Yes, I would achieve things more in life. So that's the first thing which I think any one of you who gets into that dream school of yours would feel and take away. Now, going back to the other key points, and there are a lot of people, and you will find many people talking about these points, but I'll probably elaborate about them in a different way. So for me, when people talk about academics and they talk about the professors out there, but what really shaped my mind is I was in classes of those professors whose book I read in India. Like a bit of background, I also did an MBA from a top Indian business school, and so I know both sides of the coin. And when we were in our business school in India, we would read about case studies, and I would remember reading about like a Johnson & Johnson case study, and we were like, oh, this is what happened there. This is what the people thought about. And I was in Kellogg at the same time. The person who wrote that case study, the manager and the CEO who was there in charge of Johnson Johnson during that case was actually in our class. So it's a league apart from reading a case study versus being with those people who were there writing that case study. The learnings you get, the amount of details you can get into is much more detailed. So for me, it was that particular nuance of not just reading books, but reading it from the horse's mouth. The third key point, which I mentioned here, is conversations. Conversations with some of the brightest, sharpest, and most motivated minds. And it's not only about your peers that you're going to be. People talk about it, or you're among some very smart people. Every day you do your work, your assignments with some very smart people. But for me, it was also about the people who visited you, like Indra Nooyi, like Howard Schultz from Starbucks, the CEO of Starbucks, like the presidents of different countries. And when they come in and they're talking to you about their challenges, it's a completely different conversation. You being able to stand up and ask them a question which you have always thought about and pondered, and you have never found a right answer. It's a great reveal to be able to understand what are they thinking. And those conversations would shape you in your life. Those conversations would shape what you decide and how you decide. Some people say that life is made of choices, and choices comes when when you're part of right conversations. So that's how I look at it. The fourth thing is challenges, and it's not about just like assignments. The reason I call these are practical intellectual challenges. It's not about just reading 10 books every quarter and writing a paper at the end of the quarter, but it's about, this is a life problem that you are facing in Africa. This country is facing in Africa to scale up their network. This is the exact problem that a startup based on Silicon Valley is coming to you, telling them, how do I really launch a mobile app? And it is that intellectual challenge of, it's not about just giving an answer. It's about giving the right answer. And sometimes no one knows the right answer. It's about proposing something, knowing that it's going to work, probably it might not work, learning from that, and then going back in. I think many of the Indian top institutes have started engaging with corporates to get live case studies, to get live, I would say, projects. But believe me, I think it needs a change in the way corporates look at institutes, which will then truly drive whether those projects are critical, whether those projects are truly something where they are expecting the institute and the institute students to add value, or whether it's something that they're just doing for the sake of relationship. So, but when you come to a school like Kellogg, no one is walking in just to give you a project for them to maintain a relationship. They're coming in because they need answers, and they feel that you have the bandwidth and the intellectual power to give them an answer. So I remember, just for example, I worked with one startup who had an app, a mobile app, which was there for, I would say, probably 3 years. And they were growing, they didn't really know how to monetize it. And the revenues were dropping. You would sit with the CEO once in a week. You would go and work with their outsourcing team across the world, trying to understand what is the bug, why is the bug not being fixed, what exactly is the problem. So it's not about just giving a presentation at the end of 6 months telling them that this is what I think you should do, but it's a lot more about, okay, what else is the actual problem? How can I help you? What else have you tried? Can we go and speak to your customers? Can we go and speak to your users to actually find out the problem? Like in this case, I came back and I told them pretty much, it was obviously me and a group of 5 different people, 5 different students, some engineers, some lawyers. But we went back and we told them that we really don't see you and your app surviving for more than a year, because fundamentally there are some big issues that you have to correct. So then we gave them an alternate way of generating revenue and carrying on building on their core capabilities. So that's the kind of challenges that I'm referring to. It's not about read a book and tell me what does Tata should do about their nano cars, right? It's not about a very intellectual discussion, but it's more about a practical problem. Something which is very essential, which is very key, is the network. And I can speak particularly about Kellogg. That's one of the reasons why I chose that school, is that any day, any moment, I can pick up the phone and call any one of my Kellogg alum, and mostly like 8 out of 10, they would reply back my call, or they would reply back my mail, or probably they'll tell me a time when we can speak. So that opportunity to be able to walk into somebody's life and seek an advice, or to be able to pursue a particular opportunity, even if it's a job opportunity or if it's some kind of mentorship, is something which I really value. Different schools have different cultures, different values. Some schools they really believe in having a bonding. Some schools, they really have an individualistic culture. You will have to know what kind of school are you signing up for. But for me, network was something which I really value, and it's something which I really am proud about. And that's again, it also goes back to what I do after I graduate out of Kellogg, and probably that's one of the key motivation for me to be a member of the New York chapter. And the last point is unbelievable fun. For people who have got educated in India, it's sometimes unbelievable. And in fact, that was one of my first questions I asked one of my alums who called me, I would say, the day I got my acceptance letter from Kellogg. The same night, I get a call from somebody who's calling me from US, and he's saying, "Hey, hi, I'm Alam from Kellogg. I just called you to welcome you to the school. I hope you're excited, and is there anything I can answer?" And I was like, "Wow, tell me what's happening. Tell me what's going to happen. Like, how is your school life?" And what was the biggest surprise for me is that you normally, if you study in India, you would expect to have 5 classes every day, probably 5 days a week. That's you're probably in classes for 25 hours. In a school like Kellogg, you probably would be in classes for not more than 6 to 7 hours a week. That's the whole that you actually end up within the classroom. What actually happens is outside the classroom. So there's a lot of education. There's a lot of education which you can get. The assignments, as I said, are much more practical. But also it gives a lot of opportunity to people to have fun, to enjoy life, to do what they want to do. And people, it's not that people just take that and sit and watch TV, they watch Netflix, but they also pursue some things. So you won't be surprised if one of your colleague is actually preparing for a marathon. One of my Kellogg very close friend ended up starting a startup right there in front of my eyes, about just like, how can I use all of this waste material that a school like Kellogg produces every year, and how can I give it to the people who need it? It's called a replenishment, resourcing startup. But he used his time to do that. I went in with my family, and so it was very critical for me to settle my family. And that's one of the reasons I spent a lot of those free hours there, other than just sitting into every different lunch and learn. I used that extra hours to sit at every different lunch and learn I could, to just broaden my mindset. So to give you a bit of background, I used to work for one of the biggest Indian CPG company for 6 years, pretty much made it into the middle management. Before me and my wife were expecting our first kid, it just struck me of like, what else I want to do in my life? And that's when I was like, shit, I want to go and study in an Ivy League. I really, really want to go and study in my Ivy League. And so with that goal, I was like, okay, what can I do? But going back to that, it was a big change for me and my wife and my kid, who was just 1 year old. We just moved bag and baggage, closed everything, shut everything down in India, and moved to Kellogg. We had no one whom we knew in the US. We had never visited the US. We pretty much landed 12 bags and one kid. That's how we call ourselves, 12 bags and one kid in the Chicago O'Hare Hospital, O'Hare Airport, sorry. And so for me, it was a big change in lifestyle, big change in what I wanted to do. So that's something which I used to use the time to settle my family, but also to get to know about all the different things happening in today's industry. It rarely would you get that amount of free time to explore different industries, different career opportunities, meet different people, just pick up the call and ask someone, hey, what are you doing? Can I know more about it? Can I learn more about it? Something which is very unique about Kellogg is that being a part of Kellogg, I could go and take any course in the whole university. I can sit for any PhD course if I want to, and I can still go and audit it. So I decided to go into a media school, which is one of the best media schools that you have in the US, a journalism school, and just understand what does this whole media journalism space is. Because that was the time, and it's still the time, where digital media was just exploding. And I, coming from an Indian, I would say, media landscape, which is still dominated by TV, I was really finding it difficult to comprehend where the world has moved on. So for me, again, that's what I use the time to. But in a nutshell, going back to the last point I was talking about, you can have unbelievable fun. Unbelievable fun. So let me try to bring these points to life through images, right? So pretty much this is, I try to put in some of my images, some of my, what I see, what I saw out there in a nutshell. So what you see in the center is my new school. I am going back for my reunion, my 5-year reunion in May, in a couple, like exactly in 2 months. Super excited to see this new building. But I truly believe in the tagline, be inspired. That's what I went to Kellogg for. That's what I would really recommend each one of you to think for, which is that place which will inspire you to become a better person, to become a better you, right? And that's my sole objective of coming down at 12 o'clock in the night to speak with you guys is, and I was telling Arun the same thing, is I would really feel privileged if I could move each one of you one step forward in pursuing the dream. So if you are someone who's still in the basket or in the bucket of, do I want to do an MBA? Do I not want to do an MBA? Hopefully after you hear me, you should think to do an MBA or at least keep the GMAT. If you are someone who's thinking about, yes, I want to apply to a business school in the US, hopefully after you hear me, you would say, no, I really want to go to the top school in the US, because it's different. There is a cost to it. Definitely there's a cost to it. But is it something which is differentiated? Do you expect a different service from an institute like Harvard, MIT, Kellogg? Definitely. Those are the institutes who are the rock stones of Western education. That's the place where business management as a concept was introduced. So they are obviously ahead of what it is, right? So yeah, going back to those images, what you saw in the center is my school. As I was speaking about academicians and teachers, the person on the top, Mr. Philip Kotler, he was my inspiration. He is the father, the mother, everyone, like the first guru of marketing. Everybody in this world who has read marketing has read his book, which talks about the concept of 4 Ps. For me, it was that inspiration of being next to him. Yes, I have been next to him. He is still there. He still comes to school. He doesn't take a lot of the basic courses, but he teaches a lot of the executive members. And I have seen him. I have been in near his office, and that's been like inspiration. Similarly, if you are somebody who is in the startup world, who is in the tech world, there are more than enough names of professors in Stanford. If somebody any one of you is interested in general management, in consulting, think about the professors in Harvard. I follow a few of them. They, like most of the thought leaderships, are coming from these institutes. It is amazing to be able to speak with them, to have lunch with them. Like, just walk into a lunch with them and you are just chatting about what he thinks about today's world, about today's economy, about today's politics, and it's just so much more stimulating. So that's why I decided to put Mr. Philip Kotler out there. Going from clockwise, obviously, I was just talking about the fun. That's basically me and my whole cohort in having summer barbecue in Chicago. The person on and I see a lot of movement on the slides. I'll let Arun fix it. I hope you're good now. Yeah. The person on I would say the second row, first column is Mr. Howard Skird. He was there and I heard his whole speech about how he turned Starbucks back. Why did he come back to Starbucks after he had given it moved out of Starbucks? What were the challenges of when you're running an organization like Starbucks? Like, that's the Kellogg Recognition Award, which our batch gave him. Similar to that, we had Miss Nui from Pepsi, Indira Nui, who came in. Again, amazing speeches, amazing thoughts, amazing wisdom, that you will never get anywhere. Yes, you can hear a CNBC interview and probably get some parts of it, but just that environment makes you feel and think about doing something more. The first column bottom picture is me. Actually, that was a Bollywood bash, what we call it. It's pretty much an Indian trying to teach a lot of Americans and a lot of global citizens what Bollywood is and what Bollywood bash, like how do you dance on a Bollywood song. So that was, I was leading a troupe out there. I had someone from America, from Japan, from Spain, from Thailand. We had a girls troupe, so all of us. Yeah, it was a great, and that's probably the show that goes full house, no doubt, every year in Kellogg. It's a full auditorium because everyone is looking forward to it. People just love Bollywood music. Going back on I'm actually going anti-clockwise. So then you see bottom there is Mr. Obama. He was there in Kellogg giving his speech. It was when he was still a president out there. Again, yes, you probably have heard a lot of interviews of Mr. Obama, but when he is in Kellogg, he's talking about Kellogg students. He's talking about what really matters. Again, hearing that, being able to ask him a question, thinking through it is an amazing experience. Just two more things I put in the weather. That's Evanston, that's Chicago in winter. It's basically minus 16 degrees Celsius. Most of the Ivy Leagues happen to be in the north and the northeastern, MIT, Harvard, Wharton, Chicago Booth, Kellogg. If you're lucky, you'll probably go to Stanford, which has a wonderful weather. But yes, most of it is in brutal winter, something you will get used to. We spoke about your peers. Again, that's one of the photos from my peers out there, my people whom I did my cases with, people whom I studied with. And that's me as the top rightmost. And that goes back to the point of graduation. It's an amazing feeling of walking out. And for everyone you ask, for anyone you speak with who has gone through that rigor of preparing, doing GMAT, the pain of applications, the pain of going for an interview, and then finally that amazing experience of getting through, and then the whole rigor of going through a business school in the US or business school across any of the top business schools, and then the final moment when they say, you are now an official graduate of Kellogg. That's an amazing feeling, or an amazing thing, which I will always remember throughout my life. Something which I would tell, and here I'll pause and I'll probably talk a little bit about the difference between Western education and Indian education. I have some great friends who are from business schools across India. I have colleagues. I have worked with them very closely. They're also very smart, very bright, right? I have some professors who are amazing in the Indian education. So I have all respect for them. One thing, however, I hinted on it before, and I'll talk about it more now, is despite that, I feel that Kellogg shaped the way I think. Despite going to an Indian business school, I felt I got rigor in an Indian business school. I got knowledge in an Indian business school. I really knew and I read and memorized and I got to know books, 20 of them in 1 year. Back and front, I read all of them, right? So I feel that, yes, it gave me that confidence that I know something. But I don't think it shaped me on how to think. When I went to Kellogg, when I came out of it, the biggest thing I felt myself is I can now think in a different way. I can give me any problem you have. I will think in a structured way and give you a solution, which most probably would be the real one. That's something which I did not, unfortunately, I did not get in my Indian education. So happy to speak with, again, in the Q&A, or if you have any specific questions about how do you see it, how, like, what did I feel? I'll probably give you examples about it. But that's something which I always tell people who ask me, should I do an Indian education? It's still cheaper. I can be near home. There's a lot of uncertainty. Would I want to go and do an education in a top global business school? I always say, you probably can get a lot of things, but that change in your thinking, that's probably the only reason why I would, if I had to do it again, I will do it. And it's not me who realized that. It's very funny. I was working with one of my friends in Bangalore, and he has a startup in Bangalore. When I was there, I was trying to help him out. I worked with him. I tried to set things up. He had just jumped into it. And I worked for, I would say, a year with him, helping him out. After that, I got this opportunity to go to Kellogg. I moved out. I did my MBA education. And then I said, okay, see, I have 3 months if I can go back and join my corporate life. Why don't I go back and start and spend time with him? He really needs an extra hand. I went to Bangalore. I spent a couple of weeks with him, and I just helped him again in the same way I was doing it. And he's one of my closest friends. He was the person who told me, I don't know. And he told me that, Rahul, I don't know whether you notice, but you think differently now. And I was like, what did he say? Like, what is different? And he said, like, just the factors that you're considering now in this problem versus what previously was like a single dimensional, I'm going to address this problem this way, is what I had before, that mindset, versus the mindset that I brought in now was very different. And then I realized, oh yes, probably it is true. It is true. It's just that when you broaden your thoughts, when you broaden your mind, you get inputs from different perspectives, different people, different industries, different academicians. It just broadens you as a person. So keep that in mind when you think about it. We'll probably talk about more on this when we get into the Q&A. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay. So what it takes, it's simple. There are 3 steps. It is just 3 steps. A GMAT score, an application, and an interview. And I don't know why the W decided to jump down. But yeah, it's an interview. So let me give you my take and my tips on each 3 of them. GMAT, 1 answer. You got to crack it. Yes, you can get into a good business school, an Ivy League, if you have 650. Yes, but don't bet on it. It would really, really help you. If you have a score, I would say in the range of 680, 690. And yes, if you have more than that, it just helps you, right? Frankly, English was the toughest part. I felt that English was tough, like most Indians. I think many of them of us feel that way. It's not that we are not good in English. It's just that it's not the way we were taught English. So my advice to all of you out there, if you have a similar problem, don't be shy, seek advice. Seek advice or help. I did not do it initially, and I probably think I wasted some time trying to just go through the books, read them myself, but you really can't and you should not try to learn grammar at the age of 25 or 30. You need to probably go to someone who can give you that advice and tips on how to score and move on, right? I really remember this word very nicely when I was in your seat thinking, should I actually go to Crackverbal? Like, should I actually go and seek advice? Like, I can study it. Everybody studies it by their own. Arun gave me a very, very, very interesting point. He told me, see, Rahul, for you to go from 720 to 740, or for you to go from 680 to 690 is not about doing one more question correct. It's about doing one more tougher question correct. So it's not about building a pace. It's not about just thinking about I can do more and it will do. Because if whatever takes you to 680 does not take you to 690, you'll have to do one more tougher question correct. And for the tougher question, you have to unlearn and learn something. So that's my advice to you guys out there. The fundamental thing, you have to give and practice and go over it. It's like a painstaking exercise, but there's no rescue and there's no excuse. You got to go through it, but you can be smart about how to go over it by seeking advice and seeking people who can help you, seeking resources that can help you. There are some few online courses. Again, I would not delve into deepers out here, but there are different online courses which I'm sure Arun and other, you can also Google and you can find it out. Okay, going back to the application. Before even you get into the application, my advice, which many people don't think through, is which actual colleges do you want to apply? That is a big ask. Again, I have gone through the Indian education system. We pretty much, like when I give IIT, when I give CAT, it's pretty much apply everywhere. Like who cares? If once I get into it, then I'll join it. When it comes to an US education, or when it comes to this business schools, it's high investment. You really want to be in a place from which you will get the maximum, where you would be proud to be, where you will get the maximum value out of it. So I know it doesn't really matter in some way, but in some sense it matters a lot. You must have seen all of these applications talking about what are your values and like which kind of values do you matter, what is it that you really matters to you. I never believed in it till I came here. And this is something which I like to do it just by sake. Put someone in front of me, put any business school guy in front of me. After I speak with him, probably for 25, 30 minutes, I pretty much know which kind of school he's coming from. It's not about his intellectual capability. It's just about the value of that person. You know which kind of schools he fits into very well. And that's precisely why the schools are also so particular about picking up a particular type of person. It's not about anything else. It's just about they want to create an environment of people who can succeed together, and they really want to feed in people of similar values. Sometimes it goes too much, and for example, Kellogg really believes in team building. Kellogg believes in camaraderie. Kellogg believes it was the first school which introduced the concept of teamwork back then in 1960s, 1970s. So that is probably the only reason that Kellogg is, I think, the only school which will interview anyone who has been into Kellogg. So you cannot get into Kellogg if you have not been interviewed. Many schools, they used to at least have a waiver in which you don't need to interview and you can get selected. Kellogg has never had a waiver, and the reason is the same: is that we want everyone to who's a team player, We want those kind of people in. And the only way you can know whether this guy is a team player is by speaking to them. But going back to that point, so it's very critical of bringing those values out, being able to talk about it, right? Being true to yourself and understanding which schools do you really want to be. They see there is always going to be a plan A, plan B, and a plan C. But at least ensure that your plan A schools are the one where you're going to get the maximum value. And then, yes, for the sake of investment and for the sake that you really want to hedge your bets, you can have other schools also, right? So that's one of my advice. Do a bit more research, learn about the schools, learn where you truly want to be in that school. Okay. Two advices here. Again, the first one is seek help. It is not rocket science to write an application, right? Everyone has a story that is interesting. It's just that you need someone who is capable to shape that story to make it interesting for the people who are going to read your application. And think about it, say, if every school has a different value, every school application reader has a different mindset. You cannot guess, and if you're writing one application will not fit in. Do you need to make it completely customized? No, but you need to be able to enhance, you need to be able to elevate, you need to be able to emphasize on those specific values that would, I would say, ring a bell for those application readers in those schools. So that's where it helps to not only seek advice or go to some professional people who can help you write your application and I don't say write, they customize your application in the right way, right? And other thing which you need to do is seek advice from students and alumni who have not only gone through that experience, but also can tell you how everybody else, their friends, how did they approach the application process? What did they emphasize about it? What are those small examples which they said? Like, for example, like one of my friends said, he really emphasized on his stint which he did in Africa, creating a farm. Okay, but for a school like Kellogg, that mattered, diversity mattered. And so that was a key thread in his application, right? So it's a key part of that thing of seeking advice and seeking help from students and alumni of those schools. Cool. So that's point number 2 on the application. The third is interview. When you reach that stage of an interview, and I know how it feels that, okay, I've got an interview call from one of the business schools. You really feel you are there. You feel you are there, you're going to make it. But remember, it's still a door. You got to open that door. And the door normally does not open for everyone, right? So there is still a good enough rejection rate, right? So keep your patience, keep pushing for it. That's my one tip for interview. Do mock interviews. It helps. Nothing else. That stress and being able to be cohesive when you are talking to someone from a different culture, being able to build a rapport, very important, very important. Giving an interview in India is you go and sit, they ask you 10 questions, you give point blank 10 question answers. Here, you got to be a friend with that person before even he asks you the first question. You need to be able to chit chat. I still find it difficult, even when I was interviewing for my jobs, even when I was interviewing, when I try to go out in the market and try to understand, it's still a challenge for me because I haven't grown up in that kind of environment. So you have to know how to be able to build that rapport. Again, going back to an example from myself, one of the biggest things I did, I was initially walking into that interview saying, no, I'm not going to give. I don't need a mock. Like, I can read about what people have asked. Go to pagalguy.com, go to all of these websites, read over what the questions have asked, think through it, we'll make it. But I actually did a mock interview with a Wharton alum. And nothing else, she just asked, I took 45 minutes of her time, interviewed with her, again, one of the midnights. But the specific questions he asked, I was actually surprised. I got one direct question repeated in my Kellogg interview. But more than that, the way she told me to build rapport, the way she told me to express what leadership means is really helpful. It's not bookish. It has to be practical, right? So that's, again, that's one of my key things is being able to do mock interview. Now, hear this out. This is very, very key point that I'm going to talk about interviews. And I can talk about it because I do interview candidates who are applying to Kellogg. I still interview it. This year also I've interviewed it. The interview is not about your achievement. The interview is about you. And I would repeat it. The interview is not about your achievements. The interview is about you. When I interview candidates, 9 out of 10, I really probably I'm not in the industry. I don't even I would take 10 minutes to understand what exactly are they talking when they get too detailed around this is what I achieved, this is what my job asks, this is what I'm doing. But what I'm trying to understand is who is that person? What are his values? What is his passion? Passion is super, super important because that covers everything else. Because when you can express your passion to get into the school, when you can express your passion of like what you really want to achieve in life and why this is a stepping stone in making it easier for you, that comes out. That's what we as interviewers absorb, and that's what we really tell us whether he's really the right candidate or not. Yes, we will ask you some technical, stereotypical questions, but what we are looking through that is not what you exactly did, but how did leadership come out in that? How did you go about handling situations, right? The examples you choose are important, but the way you explain the examples, the subtle nuances you need to emphasize are very, very important. I do not care whether it was a super Six Sigma project where you led 10 people, but what I'm caring is when you did that, what challenge you had and how did that shape you as a person? What will you bring to a school like Kellogg? What will you give to the community? How passionate are you about? Have you even researched the professors? Like, I normally like to ask this question, like, what is the first thing you will do when you enter Kellogg? And that's when the rubber hits the road. Like, has he even thought, like, one day I'm going to be in that school, so what do I do there? It's good for me to understand where they are in their whole decision-making process, in their whole commitment. But also it is good for them to think about it because your time flies. Once you end up in that school, the day you enter, you will not even realize it will be time for you to go out because time moves so quickly. So then it's those kind of things which will really help you also to say, what do I want to take out of it? Again, so this was, I would say, my tips. Happy to answer and get into more of these from a Q&A standpoint. Moving on, I think these are the bigger parts, but yeah, I'll touch upon these 2 points. Probably I'll probably take the easier one. Life in corporate US. Very different from working in an emerging market. And gladly it is different because that's what I wanted to pursue. It goes back to the economy, right? It's a mature economy here. There are different challenges and different opportunities. For me as a marketeer, it's a different consumer, different retail space, different media space, different innovation cycle. Everything is different, right? The cultures are different. The way you get work done is very different. I keep joking about it as when I worked in my previous company in India, in 2012, I was the first person to create a Facebook page for my brand. And it was like a big deal. Like, what are we going to do with it? We are like every 10 minutes, we're uploading something onto it. And I come here within 6-8 months in Kellogg, I realized the world has moved beyond Facebook likes. They are now all into like what's happening in the app world, what's happening in the digital space, how is programmatic going? It's a completely different space. So that it brings with it different challenges and a different kind of mindset to succeed in it. Second point, and that's what drove me here, that what keep me motivated and I would say passionate every day. You're working on the cutting edge. you're ahead of the curve in any stream, be it finance, be it operations. This is where Amazon is becoming Amazon. This is where people are talking about drone. They're talking about different stuff, and would be part of that journey. Most of the low-skill jobs are anyway getting outsourced, right? So whatever, if you are working here in this economy, it's a very different stage and cycle that you're working in. The third thing which I really appreciate is work-life balance. I spoke about this in what people do in Kellogg. Somebody's preparing for the marathon. Somebody's just taking care of their kids. Somebody is raising 3 different puppies. It's work-life balance. And that's something which people here are very passionate and very particular about. And gladly so, because then you get to, like, summer is a time when we have like a summer Friday. So basically, if a Friday 1 o'clock, the office closes, and we get time to spend and do what you want to do: read books, do whatever you want to do. So that's the good thing which I love about it. Again, happy to chat more about it. So here comes this, I would say, the elephant in the room, a bit of a sensitive topic of what's the job scenario, what happens now. My central point is you cannot just walk into the stream now. It's much more challenging than what it was 5 years back. But what is imperative is that you will need to make smarter choices. It's no doubt the economy is big. No doubt the schools are not going to dry up. There would be a lot of students who are going to still come in. But the kind of students coming in, the kind of courses that are going to go for, the kind of how you hedge your bets, what kind of options do you create for yourself, that's what I call smarter choices. Again, every case is different. Get individualistic advice. I was a bit naive when I walked in. I really didn't even look at the political environment, didn't understand what H1B actually is, how can I pursue a job later on. You definitely, at least I definitely needed to pursue a job because I had an educational loan. But at this moment of time, happy to chat with, again, people who have specific questions. But it's not a one bucket fits all. It used to be before, it is not now. So you will have to speak with people in the area that you're passionate about and understand what has worked for them, what approach should you take. This is where I feel you need mentors. You need people who have walked that path, who have been in your shoes, not people who were there 10 years back because they probably saw the good days of it. But people like me who are still struggling, who are still trying to make it happen, people who are still entering the business school, like what are they thinking? Which companies are they targeting? How are you building connections with those companies even before you come in? How are you, what kind of fields are you choosing? Which fields have the brightest opportunities? What kind of schools are you choosing? One thing which I was very clear when I was coming in was I would go to an Ivy League, not for any, like definitely for the values and the learning, but also about just the opportunity to get a job is slightly more, I believe. So that for me, if you're moving with your family, you really don't want to take that bigger risk. So those are kind of smart choices you'll have to make on how can you succeed out there. And I would say don't be that pessimistic. Sometimes some of these regulations could actually benefit people who are studying. If you read more in details, they want to facilitate, the government wants to facilitate high-tech jobs. They want to facilitate job or students who are studying here, give them an opportunity to prove themselves. So they want to go into a merit-based education, merit-based immigration system, which Canada has, which UK has. So things could also actually be in favor. So I would say, but definitely you need to monitor it. Keep monitoring, speak with people, seek advice, seek a mentor in your area. And then, as I always say, identify your plan A, your plan B, and definitely your plan C. What would happen if you don't get this? What's your backup option? How can you build it? Is there something you can do in Europe? Many of my friends from Kellogg who couldn't make it, or who had visa issues in the US, actually went to Europe. And in fact, they did a great job in Europe and then have come back to the US. Some went to Australia, some went to different parts of the world. The good thing, again, when you go to a good business school is you can seek a job anywhere in this globe. If you are willing to go there, you will find an alum anywhere there. It's just a matter of you taking the effort to know what you want and then seeking out and really showing your passion. So that's something which there are possibilities out there. So I know I've just been cognizant of time. It's actually been an hour of me rambling through. So I'll probably go to the next slide. Cool. This probably is my last slide. When I got this opportunity, I actually digged through my mails and I dig out this mail. So a couple of interesting points out here. Look at the date. The date is 1/7/11. It was 2011 January, pretty much where you guys are. I was working 9 to 9, 6 days a week for a company which I loved. But yes, I always had this goal and the company, and I never got time to study. See on the top left, it was Crackverbal. So in fact, it was Arun. I hadn't signed up for Arun's program, but I had just gone and asked him about a few details, and he had registered me in his group, like many of you got registered. And so you keep getting these emails, and this email was actually to me. I remember this person very clearly, Mr. Ravi Raj Jain, and he came in to give a talk, and he was from Harvard Business School. He came into Bangalore to give a talk. I said, what's the harm? What's the harm of me just going in and listening? And as I said, whatever you guys have done is that one step. And this is the step that I had taken. I had taken the step of actually walking in and saying, what's the harm of going on a Sunday and just listening to what he has to say? I went in, I got inspired. I fueled my passion, and then I never looked back. So starting from January of 2011, I ended up giving my GMAT in, I would say, actually it was May 7th of 2011. And then it was after that. So I wanted to give it earlier in April, but I had to keep pushing things around. But yeah, things just moved on. And then by the time I saw it, September, I filled my application forms. Again, I seek an interview. I did a mock interview. Kellogg was my number one school I wanted to go to, just because I was in marketing. It's like the Makkah of marketing. But more than that, it's a great school to be in. And then by December of that year, I got my invite from Kellogg on, I would say December 15th around. It was the end of the first round. So that's my my humble request to you guys, all of you listening, is that I think it's a great first step you have taken. I was exactly there where you are. Many of you are in 12 months from now going to be with that application letter. So just a matter of time of doing the hard work, being smart about how you prepare, seek the right advices from the right people to make it happen. So that goes to my last slide, which is, I don't know what will come in. The next slide, never stop dreaming. Life can go from 0 to 100 real quick. I had this picture when I was preparing, because I used to get really bored. And I used to really want an inspiration of what would it look like getting an Ivy League. And so I thought it's probably the right inspiration to share with all of you. So with that, I would end my spiel and my continuous babbling, and I'll probably leave it open and give it back to Arun.
Great. Thanks a lot, Rahul. I think very informative hour. I think we learned a lot. And while you were sharing your points, I also see a lot of questions. So I'm going to be the bad guy over here. Okay. I'm going to be moderating the questions for Rahul to answer. So what I'll also do is I will try to club together questions like many of you had questions on, pretty much the same topic. So I'm going to club it together. Just before we get started with the Q&A, I just wanted to just tell you a couple of things. First is I've had a lot of you ask me very specific questions with regards to your profile. Okay. So here is what I would like you to do. You can head over to the Crackverbal website, click on the admission section, and within that, under free resources, you should see something called as MBA profile evaluation. Okay, or you can just Google Crackverbal MBA profile evaluation, the first page that ends up. Go ahead, fill out your details. This will generate a PDF which will contain some basic information. Post that, you can have a call with someone at Crackverbal who can help you with your very specific questions regarding your profile, regarding what you should be doing on the GMAT and so on, right? There is another thing I just wanted to get out of the way before people leave. So we will be doing the Q&A, but just wanted to let you know, we also have Kickstarting Your MBA Plans. It's a fairly comprehensive video course which takes you through the entire journey, right from why you should be doing an MBA, the parts of an application process, selecting a B school, differentiating your profile, so on and so forth. We usually retail it as a $69 product, but for people who are joining us on this webinar, we would be giving it off at $1. You must be asking, why $1? Why not free? Okay, so here is the principle that I have. You need to value everything, correct? So putting in that $1 will show me that you actually value this, and it will also put that pressure on you to ensure that you watch all the videos, right? Good. So don't worry about the link. I know it's a little longish link. I'll be sending you the link separately over email. So don't worry on that. Let's get on to the Q&A part. So Rahul, I got a bunch of questions. So what I'll do is I'll probably take, and just to let you know, I've already answered 40 plus questions. Okay. These are all questions like, what is the average GMAT score at Kellogg, or, does it accept GRE and so on. So my take, I'm not going to take any question that is Googleable, correct? So we're going to get Rahul on his opinion. Right. So Rahul, the first question for you is, do you think a dual MBA gives good ROI? There is an allied question over here. People have asked about the 1 year versus the 2 year MBA at Kellogg. And there is another question which is regarding age. So someone in his 30s is really asking whether I'm too late to do an MBA. So kind of all three questions together.
Okay, I'll take it one by one. Dual MBA. And I would like to know more about it, but my understanding is when you're saying dual MBA, it's like a JD MBA, like an engineering and an MBA, right?
Sorry, it's more regarding your profile. Someone has already done a PGDM in India and is doing an MBA. So not a dual MBA, or double MBA maybe.
Or double MBA. A double MBA, as I said, there are three values that you can think about. Number one is the Indian academics and Indian institutions are very, very academic focused, very, very, I would say, bookish knowledge focused. The practical aspects and the way of thinking is something which I really got from the Western education. So that's something with point number one, why you should be looking for a Western education if you already have an Indian education. For me, that it was not that I wanted to do a dual MBA just for the sake of it, but it's also about what is your end goal. My end goal was to get an experience in a mature economy. My end goal was, I've done the fundamentals in a developing economy, but what's next? How do I really broaden my expertise and my skill base? And for that, it is about how can I come and work in a mature economy. Now, depending on which kind of industry you are, sometimes you have opportunities of moving abroad, but sometimes you don't. In the marketing world, you will never, marketing, HR, these are like very geographic specific fields, which then leads to like people asking, why should I recruit someone from a different country to take in? So that's when an international MBA really helps you to get in. It gets you the foot in the door. So that's point number two. And then the dual MBA, from an ROI perspective, I would say it depends on how you value education. Yes, you will pay back. And if you go back, there are sites which talks about the ROI of different schools. In general, one thing which I can say is every Ivy League, you will end up paying your education loan in a max of 5 years, if not 3 years. And there's a stats which are out there. So I don't really think that fund would ever be an issue if you get to the right schools. You get the right funding. So for example, in a school like Kellogg, the school offered a loan. I didn't have to go out to the market and do anything. The school offered a loan. I'm still paying it back. It's a bit painful. Yes, I agree. But it's not that that somebody can take my dream away just because I don't have the funds. And hopefully in a year, I would be done with it. And so then you everything else is an ROI, positive ROI. So going back to the second question, which was actually, I don't remember the second one, but I do remember the third one.
The question was first is, a double MBA. Second is 1 year versus 2 year MBA at Kellogg. Mm-hmm. And the third one was older applicants, applying.
Yeah, okay. The 1 year versus 2 year MBA. And this is where I clarify it. The 1 year MBA is essentially the 2 year MBA from the second year. There is no difference. The way we talk about it is Kellogg has 600 students graduating every year. And out of that, 100 students, and actually it's more than 100 now, they join in the second year. Just because there's no value for us to go and do the same 101 marketing. Just to give you a bit more background around this particular course, the European model is 1 year MBAs. INSEAD, London School of Business, blah, blah. US MBA is 2 year. But technically, there's always been this question of like, what is it that a 2 year MBA gives that a 1 year MBA does not give? And because the same school, the same companies are always recruited in Europe, and they give the same role both sides. Kellogg, I would say 50 years back was again, one of the other things we pioneered in. We pioneered in saying, we're going to try a 1 year MBA and see where it goes. That's why we are the only, I would say the most reputed. We have 50 years plus alums of those who are 1 year MBA. So in terms of, there's no difference from an external perception. And in fact, internally also, there's no difference because you go in and from day one, you're part of the same group. It's just that you did not have courses before. There are certain nuances, however, in being able to shift career. That becomes, you don't get an opportunity to intern. So it's, you move in June, starting in September, you're down into recruitment. So changing careers is slight of an issue. And the second thing is how smart you are to get a job. Think about this way, you will be competing with 2 year MBA students who already had a summer experience, who have already gone through so many different interviews. They are much more polished versus you who would have to really get up to speed quickly. So that's something which we try to help other one year students on how to get up to speed quickly. But that's something which is going to hit you like a train, but everyone copes up to it. You will also have to cope up with it. The third question is MBA at the age of 36, 37. There are some schools like IMS, I think it's IMS in Switzerland, but yes, they take people who are slightly more, who have slightly more age, who have aged a little bit. But the question is not what is it late for you to go into the school. The question is, what do you really want to achieve out of it? Because you need to understand is once you graduate, in some sense, you are restarting your career. And getting lateral jobs also becomes more and more difficult as you go higher up the level. So if by the age of 36, 37, you are in say a director, senior manager or a VP level, what exactly would you do after you get out of it? Do you want to join in at a lower level? So that's my biggest advice to people out there. It takes a lot to be able to go back and to work under people who are in some sense junior to you. But you'll have to really suck up your ego and do it. I did it and it wasn't easy. I can tell you that. To restart my career, but always you'll have to keep remembering, why did I come here? What is it I wanted to do? And believe me, if you prove yourself, you can accelerate your career in an economy like US. It's just that you have to prove yourself and you have to have the patience. So from a school standpoint, the school do see you as a bit of a disadvantage, not because of anything else, because they always keep thinking, where will I fit this particular person? What kind of opportunities will I be able to give him that will be commensurate to the amount of investment he's putting in? So that's number one. Number two, you yourself will have to understand, what will I do after this MBA?
Great. So Rahul, I think, just since we are on the topic, I'm seeing a lot of questions on two specific areas.
Mm-hmm.
The first specific area is with regards to the whole H1B. I know you touched upon it, but I just wanted some clarity on, the H1B. The second question is around the ROI of an MBA. Given the job market, the kind of money that we're going to be investing, so I think the 1 and 2 are kind of tied together. But your thoughts on that?
So I touched upon the H1B. No one knows what's going to happen on H1B even tomorrow. Right? Every day there are different directions that are coming in. Essentially, what you need to be prepared for. First of all, remember this: you guys are going to come in 2018. By the time you graduate, it will be 2020, right? So if things could be completely different in 2020. The election would happen in 2019, and there should be, hopefully, there would probably, we'll have to understand which party, who's the new, who continues to be the president, or who is the new president, right? So the whole political atmosphere might change completely. So it is very difficult to plan that way. But what you need to be prepared for is, what are those areas, what are those industries, what are those companies who are currently recruiting, who would always need, how do I expose myself to those? How can I build skills in those areas? You can still continue to be in the area which you're passionate about, but you might have to bring in certain nuances. So for example, if somebody is in a weird, say, supply chain, which is like, okay, very unique, but then if you are thinking that you're going to go into supply chain and then go into a typical manufacturing company like, say, Boeing or GE, unlikely. That's when you have to be a bit more smarter, or, okay, I still want to pursue supply chain. Down the line, I might get into these companies later on, 10 years from now, but which are those companies who are open to supply chain? And then you start looking at tech companies. Amazon becomes huge. And these companies are recruiting a lot of, I would say, MBA grads who work in supply chain, who work in technology, who work in project management, who work in marketing and finance. And then you start being a bit more smarter. So that's my first advice, is make career choices, smarter career choices, not only about the school that you will go to, the skills that you want to really highlight and you want to sharpen, but also the kind of companies you want to target early ahead in life. The second question you had about was ROI.
Yeah.
Right. I would again go, I think my response stays the same, and I remember this again from when I was preparing. I went to the Wharton team had come to Bangalore. So the schools keep visiting different cities. So they had come to Bangalore. One of their students out there, I had asked him the same question, like, hey, you made it to Wharton, like, how much did it cost? And like, how did you fund it? He gave me one answer. If you get into the right school, I have never seen anyone walking back because they did not have funds. And with that blind faith, I went in, and I would say, okay, we'll figure it out. And it just happened. Like, the school will ensure that if you have been selected, if you are the right person and you write to them, they will give you ways of how to do it. It could be a loan through them. It could be a loan through a bank. It is. I don't think or something, or I just believe in God. Sometimes it just works out. He has his own way of making it working out. Going back to the ROI, again, the ROI, there is something which is quantifiable in terms of actual value that you start earning after you graduate. Most of the jobs, when you get into a good business school, is 100K plus, right? And then you just need to understand, okay, it depends on what kind of background you have. Do you come with family? Do you don't come with family? How much loan have you actually picked up during your business school? Some people have it in the range of 150 to 170K, right? The tuition fees have increased. I have realized that a little bit, but overall you would expect to spend around 170, 180. If you go crazy and go to all of those global trips, you might spend around 200K, right? But keep that in mind. So if you have spent 200K, you start with a loan of 200K. Many people during internship earn around 30K, right, in 2 months, 20 to 30K in 2 months. Essentially, you pay back 20K out of that. That's how people do it. And then if you are earning in the range of 100 to 150K, but you can save around 40K every year, you are essentially going to pay back that, and you will pay back the loan in 3 to 5 years. So if you do this base calculation, that's how I look at ROI. There is an opportunity cost, obviously, that you are foregoing of what you could have earned, but then think about your whole lifespan of, say, 40 years of working. What is that 2 years versus what do you get, the satisfaction and the ability to accelerate your career because of the right knowledge, the right thinking, and the right network, which you can later on exploit. So that's how I would say, do a bit more broader calculation. If you do a very financial calculation, still it will come down into around 3 to 5 years is by when you will pay it off. But if you do a much more broader calculation, it still makes, at least to me, it still makes sense.
Right. Cool. So, Rahul, thanks for that. One more question that I think a great question that a lot of people are asking is with regards to Kellogg per se, correct?
Mm-hmm.
People seem to have this confusion on what specialization really means. I just answered a person who asked, and I didn't get it to you, but I thought I'll just share. So he said there is an MBA in blockchain, right? I almost fell off my chair. Correct? Unbelievable. So I understand, just for the benefit of everyone, MBA is a general management program that gives you a cross-functional skill set. But, I will let Rahul take that on, so people have this thing about electives and specialization, and something tells me that they are off track. So you could give me, you could throw light on that.
Yeah. Technically, there isn't like a specialization. Okay. You just select courses. However, what happens is at the end of your program, the way you select your courses, you end up specializing in one or the other way. The reason why people like to mention specialization is because from a recruitment standpoint, because even from a network standpoint, it's just that you start meeting and sitting and building a network in the same area, right? Specialization becomes important when you're going into a very niche area. Like I did a specialization in management and strategy, in marketing and strategy. Half of the people in Kellogg will end up getting a specialization in marketing and strategy because there are more number of courses floated in that space. So even if you find any course interesting, you would end up doing that. But then I also end up doing, I would say, specialization in some sense in decision making. And so for that, like I just picked up some very niche courses like power management. Like what's power in an organization? I took very statistical courses like of where you actually had to do statistics, analytics. And so it was just my eagerness to understand where is data in this world, what is going to happen. And then I realized by the time I graduated, it was in that space. It isn't like you need to specialize in any particular thing. Companies don't ask, very frankly. It's just that people like to quote it when they send their resume.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I don't know whether it answers the question.
No, I think, yeah, so just to kind of, so most people who are attending today's webinar, I think they are also at a point where they need to be doing their own research as well. So the idea behind this webinar is to kind of give you the right direction so that you can go there. But, it may not be possible for us to give a very specific black and white question, or rather black and white answer. So as I said, any questions, please reach out to the person that you're in contact with at Crackverbal. We will try to arrange something where we can look into very specific questions regarding your profile and try to answer them, right?
Yeah, and just one last point on that question is, be very clear when you're going for a very niche specialization. Like MBA in blockchain, I don't think Kellogg offers it. But even if it offers, it's a hot topic now. But then do understand that you might get, if you think that there are jobs that are coming out in that space, it could be super interesting. But you don't want to end up in putting all of your eggs in one basket, whereas later on when you need an H1B, you have to go very broad. So that's how you need to play it up. And because it's not about what you get as a specialization, but it's also about the courses that you have taken, which you can talk about with a recruiter.
Right. So what I will do is I have two broader questions. And once I get through the two broader questions, given that we are close to 12 o'clock, Rahul, what I would do is probably do a sort of a rapid fire, okay? But not like a rapid, but you could probably just go through like one sentence answers for many of the questions where, it could be a fairly straightforward question. We have already answered 62 questions, by the way. Was typing, but we still have 48 open questions. I don't think it's possible for us to answer all of them. So as I said, please make sure that you reach out, but we will try to answer as much in the next 10 minutes or so. So the two large questions, I'll take the first one now. There is this question around how do I really go about getting that money, be it loans or be it whatever form, to fund for my MBA. Because in your case, you got a loan from Kellogg and you didn't have any paperwork to do. But do you have any thoughts on how a middle class Indian would actually fund a 1 crore, 1.2 crore bill for his MBA?
I'm also middle class, number one. Reach out to the admission team. Tell them, obviously, once you have got the admission letter, tell them that this is how you address and what can they help you. They will find a solution for you. So think about it this way. Everyone who comes in, even if it's Wharton, Howard, even if it is any of those Stanford schools, right? Many of them are middle class. It's just that you need to reach out, you need to request, you need to pick up the phone, speak with them. Then they will find a solution for you.
Right. I think that's what each case is individual. And also, Rahul, since the last couple of years, there are some specialized companies that have started giving loans for MBAs at very competitive rates, and they give a non-collateral loan for almost 100% of your tuition fees. So I think there are a lot of options available today, and I'll also be pointing out to some resources to the audience later on.
Just one advice: don't take it from India. You can burn your hand. Because first of all, the Indian interest rate is much higher than the US one, right? So it still benefits that you take the loan from a US bank.
Right. The second question, Rahul, is more in terms of people asking, I have 3 years experience in IT and, I have done so and so, but I don't really I'm not an Olympic athlete. I've not saved, poor people in Somalia. So how do I really get into a top 10 school in the US? Do I really have
12 o'clock.
Sorry, do you really get into it?
So the question was, really do we have it in us to get into a top school,
As I said, at places it would be challenging, but it's not about much what you have done, but who you are. Being able to bring that out is the art. This is where you need to seek advice on like which of these things. See, if you have spent 25 years and you have been perseverant, you have done something, that you have done something. It's just that how do you put that in a simple way in front of someone who can understand who you are? That is the key. So if people don't take an application and this is an IT guy and this guy is a consultant and this guy is going to win a Nobel Prize. It's not that way. Everyone, it is more subtle about what does this application tell me which is unique about this person? Why does this person become unique, and how does he fit this school's values? The question is simpler. What will he give to the school and the alumni now and later on? Based on where he is, do you think he's going to be successful? I interview people who are very, very simple. They are probably demand planning, very simple jobs. But the key thing I find, and they have already gone through the application process, they haven't selected for an interview. And it's just now that whether I believe in him or not. So I think getting an interview should be possible if you get the right advice and you seek help from people who can frame your application in the right way.
Great. So what I'll do is I'll probably ask the last question, then I can get into the, probably the rapid fire kind of thing. This is more in terms of what were you doing before MBA? What was your role? Did you really change your background track to get into brand management? And there is also a question around, is Kellogg the school to go for marketing? Or, is it bad? In fact, one person asked, is it bad for finance and everything else? So you can answer those in one shot.
Okay. Number one, I used to work in the brand management space with ITC, which is the biggest Indian CPG company now. I worked across their tobacco business, their personal care, and then the food business. I used to run, if you guys know Minto Fresh, Candyman. I used to run their confectionery business for a year and a half. So that's what was my background. I did, when I went in, I wanted to do brand management. That was, in fact, the biggest surprise I got when I went to Kellogg, where people said, are you sure you want to do this? Because CPG companies don't recruit international students. Like there are 45 CPG companies who come in. 2 of them at that moment of time used to recruit H-1B international students. But I went in with that particular hope that I really would get a chance to do it. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I really don't want to redo the fundamentals, don't want to do marketing 101, finance 101, but I want to just go and take the electives, broaden my mindset, and being able to switch into a developed market in a mature economy. That's why I took the 1-year course, because it was 66% of the overall funding, but I could do it in 1 year. Particularly when you have a wife and your family, it just made more sense. There are a lot of other people who come in and they're trying to switch. Again, it's on a case-to-case basis. Going back to the second point, is Kellogg the school of the marketing school? By far, league apart, yes. There is no other school across the world which comes anywhere close to the capabilities, the teachers, the thought leadership that Kellogg brings for marketing. Having said that, what people really do not know is that it's also the #1 school for general management. And that's the reason Kellogg every year puts in more people into BCG, McKinsey, Bain, the top 3 consulting firms across the world. Out of the cohort of people who go into these 3 firms, what I know from during my recruitment process is Kellogg puts in the biggest batch into this school, into these consulting firms. So it's great for, it's by far the #1 for marketing. It's the top for consulting. When it comes to finance and when it comes to other things, that's where you'll have to take a choice out here. It depends on, yes, there are probably other schools like Wharton, like Chicago Booth, who are probably have better faculty for finance, who have probably some courses which are taught by Nobel laureates, who you would expect would be more, I would say, knowledgeable about those particular areas. The question comes in is, what do you want to do? And do you fit with that value of what a Wharton or a Chicago Booth offers, right? Or do you really fit with the values of Kellogg? That's so. See, all Ivy Leagues, I would say, are a plus minus 2-3%, right? It's very difficult to choose from a true school from an ROI standpoint. What really differentiates is the values, the alums. Who do you want to really build a network in the long term? So there are a lot of people who come to Kellogg to do finance. They go to PE, they go to VC. It's not that. It's in fact, it's surprising that Kellogg puts in around 15 to 20% of their batch into marketing. That's it. It's not that like 80% of people go to marketing. It's around 15 to 20%, and you can pick up the employment report of the year. But the reason why people go to Kellogg for marketing is in other schools, they put around 3 to 6% of their batch into marketing, because that's where people don't go if they want to do marketing. The companies don't come in if they want to do marketing. So the same thing stands for finance here. Probably we put in around 20% of our batch into finance, but a school like Wharton or Columbia, Wharton, Chicago, Booth, and I'm probably making up some numbers, but they would probably put in 30% of the batch into finance. The question is, which school do you associate yourself with? And are you willing to fight on later on? Are you willing to say, okay, I'm going to go to this school because I really want to be in this school. And then later on, I'll have to really take some more steps to come to the East Coast and to fight for a job in New York, because Kellogg is in the Midwest.
Right. So cool. I think, Rahul, we are done with the larger questions. So what we'll do is we will try to do a rapid fire of sorts. Okay. What I'll do is I'll ask the question, whatever comes to your mind, maybe, a sentence or two, and then we can move on. And let's try to see if we can cover, questions this way. All right. So cool. So get started. Then the first question is, Kellogg's Media School is brilliant. Have you come across another B school with a great journalism media school?
NYU.
NYU.
New York. Yeah, NYU Stern. But again, middle is by far the best.
Right. I think we have answered the question on post-MBA job and the current US political scenario. There is this question, which is, what is the differentiating factor? But I think that also we have already answered. I think we had a lot of questions on immigration. Is there any specific US MBA school that has a greater ROI than an MBA anywhere else? Any specific? Is there any specific school with a greater ROI that you can think of?
A greater ROI that I can think of compared to what?
As among the other schools, like among the top schools, is there any specific schools that you think has a great ROI?
No, I would say most of the ROIs of the Ivy Leagues are similar, right? There could be ROIs, higher ROIs if you actually take a very local school where the cost of education is on 40,000. We call it state universities, right? But then the question is, you'll have to be confident to find a job with that. But if yes, you find a job, it's just 40,000.
Right. Someone asked about, do you think doing an MBA from Canada and then getting to US to work, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's tough. I think I have seen people, I have met people who have done an MBA from Canada. Number one, you will most likely get absorbed into a company in Canada. You just can't come to the US to seek a visa. So then the question comes in is that, does that company have an opportunity in the US? And then if they do have, is that a short-term opportunity or a long-term opportunity? So either way, you'll have to take a risk. It's just a matter of, do you want to play it safe by going to Canada, or you want to take the risk upfront by trying to come to US?
Right. And I think you did answer the question on job switch, right?
Job switching from where to where, sorry?
You did mention about switching domain. I think there are a couple of questions on those lines. There is this great question from Ashwati, who said, when most graduates talk about their case studies and experiences with top B schools or even general MBA programs, they always talk about the analytic and strategic approach to issues and situations. I would like to understand what is their approach and focus on creative and qualitative branding. And also, if it's a drawback if the current work experience is not analytics or management.
Okay, if I understand this question, I don't know how to give a short answer to this. But Ashwati, if your question is, are you interested in a creative job, and how do we foster and how do we nurture creative abilities, right? I would say that specifically in marketing, both sides of the brain are needed and both sides of the brains are nurtured. So if I go into a very analytical decision-making course, I balance myself by going into media journalism courses. I go into understanding more about like aspects of advertising. But again, try to understand which kind of industries you're going for. If you're going for marketing, it is still going to be heavily driven by data. If you want to get into a media agency or a creative agency, then probably you don't need an MBA. There are other master courses that you can do to really get into the creative side of the business.
Right. Abhay had this question. What do you think post MBA, should a person be, specific to a particular domain, pick up domain expertise, or would you suggest people to have a different, a generic balanced profile where he picks up a lot of things on the way?
Is it during MBA or post MBA?
During MBA, post MBA, both, I would imagine.
So during MBA, I would say try to keep it more generic, at least in today's environment. If what you need, what you're coming for is employment, then try to keep it generic so that you can fit and you can nurture yourself. If you are coming in saying, I really want to be the hedge fund finance manager and I'm willing to go to any other place if I don't get a job here, then obviously go for it and go into as deep as you want to go. Because then the more deep you will go, the more chances that you can go to a different geography to get a job, right? Post MBA, I guess it's all about which kind of company you get into. Because once you get into a company, a firm, you most likely will specialize with time. You'll specialize into a particular function.
Right. So we'll again get into a shorter question format. Okay, I think
okay, yeah.
Probably we are at about 12:12, so we are 10 minutes off, but probably another couple of minutes. What is your opinion of choosing a lower ranked school with decent scholarship versus getting into a top 10 program without any scholarship?
The question is, what's your objective? Is it education or is it job? Low ranked school, chances of getting a job, slightly difficult. Not many companies who sponsor visas go to these schools unless it's an IT, like an MS in IT kind of stuff. But it's MBA from a lower school, much more tougher to get a job now.
Right. What is your take on GMAT scores while you're applying for a job, while you're doing your MBA? Do companies ask for your GMAT scores?
Not really. Not really, but sometimes you do put it in if people do not know what your undergrad school is about.
Right. What would be your networking tip for people moving to a USB school soon?
Drink a lot of beer, be able to chat about the weather. It's a completely bigger. I don't think there's a short answer to it. Google enough, there'll be a lot of stuff around it.
Right. One more question. MBA for entrepreneurship. What's your take?
If you want to start up your own firm, there are some great courses, some great people. In fact, there are some great opportunity to start up your own firm while you are studying. Many of the startups, many of the people who have become successful entrepreneurs started the firm when they were studying. You get the professors, you get the PE/VC advising you, and then in fact you can go ahead and pitch and get the money there itself.
Right. Specific questions to the current scenario. So we have this question from Abhishek. Do entertainment companies like Fox, Disney, Warner Brothers sponsor H1?
I don't know whether to comment on this or not, but my take is most likely no.
Okay. But it could be case to case, but I would imagine no, right?
Tell me if they need an IT guy, a tech guy, yes, they would.
Right.
Depends on what you're doing.
Do pharmaceutical companies come? Again, Ankit had this question.
Yes.
All right. Anil had this question, which is, I think we have already answered it. What is the best way to research? I would suggest going to LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to really suggest, on getting to this. I'm just seeing if there are any other questions. I think most of the questions have been answered, but yeah, I think that's pretty much what we had. Okay, so thanks a lot, Rahul. It was really great having you here, and all the people that we tried, answering questions. I'm pretty sure they got a lot of value from this webinar with this session. And just one thing, which is we will keep this conversation with Rahul on. So it's not that he's going to come and go. So we have had a discussion, and Rahul will be mentoring some Crackverbal students in this coming year. So we will get into those details a little later, but thanks a lot for joining, and all your specific questions, please reach out to your Crackverbal contact, and we will make sure that we get those answered for you. Right?
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for inviting me. All the best.
Thanks, Rahul. Really great
Take
having
care.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.